So what we have as the theme for this month is love as safety, which is an interesting concept, right? Because when we talk about love, we often think, well, that's easy. That's an easy thing. Why would there need to be love as safety? Why would you even need to put it that way? So we all know about when love isn't safe, and that ends up in the newspapers and sometimes on the front page, sadly. But there are lots of times when love feels like it isn't safe because we've got to open ourselves up just a little bit more than we otherwise are comfortable with. And sometimes we come up against our own stuff, and what happens is we sometimes project it onto the other person. This is sort of basic psychology that we're looking at here. So that's one of the things that we need to look at, is try to figure out, if we are all one, why would I not feel safe being in community and in relationship with someone else? How can I get my mind to the point where I feel safe loving as deeply and as profoundly as I choose to at any given moment? So we all have our own boundaries, our own ideas about where those limitations are and what they look like. But if we can just sort of nudge ourselves around the edges of that, just push ourselves ever so slightly a little bit further, we get to have a new experience of what that might look like. We get to have a new experience of a deeper relationship with a wider group of people, and that every person that we come in contact with is a reflection of that one consciousness and that one mind. So the way that I look at it is, it's kind of like trying to forget who I am, while at the same time remembering who I am. Which is tricky. It's really, really tricky. And if you've seen, like, one of the symbols that we have is the Science of Mind symbol, and it actually is a thing that goes up like this. And at Mile High Church in Denver, where they've got thousands of people that go, they put a little circle in the middle for the head, right? Because that's what we are. And so the idea is that we are individualized expressions of spirit, but when we're engaged with other people, the more we can recognize that we're all contained in this universal consciousness and operate from that higher plane, the greater our experience and our expression of spirit in our lives is going to be. It's kind of airy-fairy, and yet if you play with it often enough, it's really not that airy-fairy, because you actually start to see demonstrable difference happening in your life as you start to live more and more from that absolute place. So I'm going to bring it down, like right down. That was way up there. I'm going to bring it right back down into where we are as human beings. And I want to talk about, first of all, I'm going to give us one quote from Ernest Holmes, and he says, "One life behind all that lives. One, never two." So that's interesting. One. So when I think I'm individual, you're individual, but we're all expressions of that one. So that's what he's really getting at. The unity of all life, to learn this is the secret of the ages. So bringing it back down to this level, one of the things that I like to look at is the animal kingdom. Because there's all these different living things that are happening everywhere. All these living beings, all these living creatures. And sometimes when we work with and spend time with our pets, animals, nature, it's interesting how we can start to see life in a different kind of way. We start to see life in a way that maybe we don't choose when we're dealing with adults in our lives. Or maybe some people, would use children as an example. I think there's a lot of similarity between children and animals. So I want to talk about two animals in my life. that are super important. One has passed, and the first one was a cat that I had, and her name, I gave her the name of Sif, which was a Norse goddess. And she showed up in my life, and so this is about one mind, one consciousness, and you can choose to believe this or not. I'm just putting it out there. So I had a dream, and I woke up from the dream, and my daughter was with her dad, and so I went and picked her up after school, and she would have been grade 4, something like that. No, she was younger. She was in grade 2, getting the two pets mixed up. And I said to her, we have to go pick up our cat. And she said, what? What do you mean pick up our cat? And I said, well, I had this dream, and apparently my cat, our cat, is at the SPCA right now, and we have to go pick her up. She's like, okay, Mom. So we get in the car, and there's only one. I lived in Kelowna at the time. There's only one SPCA in Kelowna. And she said, well, how are you going to know which one's your cat? And I said, I know it's black and white, and other than that, I just know that I'm going to know if it's there. And maybe it's just a dream, and I told her it was a dream, and if it's not right and it's not happening, we leave. I'll know. So we get there, and they open up, and there's a whole bunch of cages, as there are at the SPCA, and a bunch of black and white cats. I look at one, no, that's not it. Look at another one, no, that's not it. Like really obvious, not it. And then I see that there's one cage where there's a little cardboard box way in the back. And there is, I ask if there's actually anything in that particular cage. And the woman said, yes, there is. There's a cat in there. Yes, it's not just empty. And so I said, okay, well, I want to look at that one. And so she said, okay, it's a bit shy though. So she opens up the door, and I put my hand out like this. And this stunning Norwegian forest cat walks out, comes towards me, and flops her head straight down onto my hand. And I was like, okay, we're good, we're done. So she came into our life, and she was a goddess. I mean, it seemed appropriate. She was Norwegian, and give her a little Scandinavian name. And she lived with us for a very long time. So there was something there, right? There was some kind of an energy connection, a divine thing that was happening. And we all get to have these experiences. We can choose to pay attention to them or not, but there is a oneness that's not just between humans. It's interspecies oriented. It's an energetic thing. And we can either think that it's out there, or we can think that it's in here. When we think that it's in here, we get to make choices in according with that. So I'm going to give you another story. This is many years later. So some years I'll fast forward. So when my daughter was about 10, I decided that I wanted to downsize on the pets. So this was my large dog that was about 80 pounds had passed, and it was time to get a new dog, and I decided time to downsize. So I wanted to get a little Shih Tzu. So I got this little Shih Tzu, and she is absolutely adorable. And she initially used my daughter as a jungle gym, like climbed all over her. And the cat thought it was a kitten, and anyway, it was very interesting. They had an interesting relationship. So recently, though, she's now 12. And so what's happened with her is that she was starting to get a little bit morose, a little bit depressed, a little bit down in the dumps. And I thought, is she getting old? Like 12 is old, but it's not that old. What's going on with her? I have a busy life. And so where's my energy going? And she's about age 4. Think about that, like she seems to be about age 4. Where's my energy going? Most of my energy is here in this space. She's getting the leftovers. She's a 4-year-old getting the leftovers of the energy, right? She's not happy about this. She's getting like I said, depressed, morose. And so I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, this is not good. She's going to be on the planet longer, and I don't think that I'm going to be able to change things a whole lot. What do I do about this energy? What do I do about where she's at? I love this dog. I don't want to give up a dog. I'm not a giving up kind of person. That's not who I want to be. But I also don't want a sad dog. So I started pondering it, and she had been spending some time at Missy's house, one of the people here, one of our wonderful volunteers, practitioners in training. And I couldn't help but notice that my highly, highly, highly social dog, and she really is a highly social dog, was awfully prancy. Awfully prancy. Oh, Missy's here. Oh, look who's here. Jump, jump, jump. All those kinds of things. And I thought, this is interesting. This is not what I'm getting at home. She's getting something different over there. This is energy. This is life force happening. So the question becomes, do I want my energy to be, do I need to change my energy? Am I going to change where my energy is going and what I choose to do with it? If love is leading me, if love is the thing that I want, I need to love myself, be clear about myself. I need to love my pet. I need to honor what that energy is as well. And so we made an experiment. And my dear little Suki spent an entire month with Missy and her mom, and came back after a month full of beans, so excited to see me, and so excited to see everybody in the building. She's now the official ambassador. She greets everyone now. In the elevator, she's up, oh, hello, have you seen, I'm back. I was away. you know, like when you've been on holiday, right? She's come back with all this energy, all this life, all this love. And interestingly, I now have more energy for her too. And so how do you want to spend your ending years for those of us who are on the older side? Nobody wants to go to that retirement home where you sit in the corner and drool, right? My poor dog was sitting in the corner, drooling. This is not how she wants to live her life. It's not how I want to live my life. So we now have got agreement where we are going to alternate. Well, I have 1 month, so it's not too hard on her, and she can settle in. And then Missy and her mom enjoy her for another month, and she gets to spread her love with senior centers and be a therapy dog and go out and socialize and go to the beach and do all kinds of events and exciting things that I don't have the time to take her to. And then she comes to rest with me and hang out with the building and chat with people in the elevator. It's funny, right? But it's a living life. And it's the same life that we have. And we forget to honor the life that we have. We forget to do that. And when we honor it, and we honor it in each other and in ourselves, we get more. We don't get less. We get more. We're not giving it away. We're adding to. So I'm going to give you one other example. One more example. Because this one I just absolutely love. Is this not the cutest little thing? Like, really, it's so, so cute. What is it? It's a tomato. Oh. No, it's not a hamster. So this has a story. It's got a very unique and special story. First of all, I just want to say that I love tomatoes. My dad grew tomatoes, and so I've got like an affinity for them. And in this teaching, we talk about planting a seed idea. We talk about planting a seed idea and then nourishing that with our thoughts mindfully, and then seeing what happens when that grows. So seed ideas come in all kinds of different forms. And for Corey, it came in the form of, let's do a community garden. And this was last February, I think, and we did at We asked Friends for Life. They were looking for something at the time. They were a community organization in the West End, and they had some lands and some plots that hadn't been used. And so Corey said, let's do that. Let's see what happens. And so a bunch of people here decide, you know what, we'll go out with a wheelbarrow. And yes, I blessed the garden before it started. And we went out with the wheelbarrow, did the tilling of the dirt, put the seeds in, blessed them very, very mindfully about what they were going to give back. And one of the seeds that was planted was a tomato plant. That in turn, and if any of you know about tomato plants, it had to get taken home, right? Because planting a tomato plant in April is pretty much going to kill it with our weather. So it got taken home by one of our other community members who nourished it along with her 2 little children and let it grow in her condo. And she doesn't have a balcony. Let it grow in her condo and then mindfully took it back along with her 2 little children who were like 5 and 3 and put it back into that community garden. And then it grew. And then it produced this. Wow. And then Corey brought it to me when we had our dinner, our gratitude dinner. And so it's made its full journey. Full journey. Now think about how many lives that little seed touched. That idea went from just an idea. Why don't we do this? Who knows if it's going to happen? But why don't we do this? And then it got planted. And then other people came along and nourished it. They didn't say, that's a crappy idea. They didn't go and toss everything around. Other people in the community, because this is an open garden, could have been people that could have pulled up those plants and they never would have made it. Those are the same thing as our thoughts. Have to nourish them, have to pay attention to them, have to care for them mindfully. Give them water, give them fertilizer, give them soil, give them the food that they need. And then we get to see the rewards. And so all of those people their life is all contained in here. And then this beautiful thing gets eaten, which then becomes part of what we are. I think that's miraculous. Other people might go, it's just a tomato. But what world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in the world where it's just a tomato? Or do you want to live in a world that says this is divine? And it's divine because I recognize the divinity that is within it. And so it's real. It's real when we do that, and that's our consciousness and our mind. So I want to go back to Rumi and the story that Corey referenced, and I'm just trying to find it, because this is all about how we're all connected. And I'm just looking for my Rumi story, and I can't seem to find him. Where I know he's here, because I put him in. And of course he's gone. The bottom line, I'll have to, here we go. Okay. So Rumi is a Persian Sufi poet from, I can't remember what century, I think it's the 15th century, long, long time ago. And he's just one of those brilliant writers. He does a lot of poetry around, or did a lot of poetry around love, and so he's a perfect one for us to think about at this time. And so he says, this being human is a guest house. So we are a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Rumi says, welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So it's all up to us. What do we want to choose to do with these guides? I could have looked at that cat. I mean, I don't know how I could have, but and said, "Ew, you just flopped your dirty hat on my hand." Wouldn't have been the right cat. I didn't feel that way. Welcomed it in. Welcomed it in. No idea. Welcomed it in. Welcomed the depression of my dog in. Welcomed that in. What do I want to do with that? How do I want to manage that? Welcome, it sounds funny, but welcome anger in. Recognize it. What do I want to do with that? How do I want to manage that? Welcome conflict in. How do I want to do that? How do I want to manage that? As we welcome these things in, we deepen our ability to create the connection that is already there. We begin to be able to see, because we activate ourselves, we practice the welcoming, and we see the demonstration and the change that happens as a result. And now we know more about ourselves, about what is possible for us, and we know more about how we can engage with an increasing, ever-expanding group of people. It's a very powerful practice. Very, very powerful. So I'm just going to bring it all to one closing thing here. And that is that right now, and I heard another piece on CBC this week that was really interesting, and it was a Hebrew scholar from the University of Jerusalem, and he is a specialist actually in history. But he is very, very interesting, specialist in history, university scholar, but he is fascinated with meditation. He has a very deep Vipassana, I think that's the correct pronunciation, meditation practice. He meditates for 2 hours every day, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night, and once a year, he spends 30 days in a silent retreat. He was interviewed on CBC, and I was thinking to myself, how did we end up with an interview on CBC with a guy out of Jerusalem? Like, that just seems strange to me. And it's like, well, he married his husband in Toronto. So it's like, okay, but he lives in Israel. So there's a true bona fide Canadian connection. And he's also the author of a very interesting book that's called Homo Deus. Homo Deus. So his first book was Homo sapien, how we got to be who we are, that whole idea about the species. Homo Deus is basically us, Homo, as God. So he's saying we're making a shift right now. We're making the shift from external fix. We've got all these things figured out, and now we're internalizing. And how do we want to live going forward? He's curious about artificial intelligence. He's curious about what's going to happen as so many things get automated. Where are we going to be 50 years from now? If everything gets automated, what's going to happen? Where are our jobs going to be? Where is anything going to be? What are we going to do about that? His concern is that we will develop what he calls a useless class. And he doesn't mean that disparagingly. What he means is, well, maybe he does, but not maybe the way you think of it. What he's saying is that there may become a class of people, and possibly a large class of people, who are useless because they don't have the skills that are required to do the jobs and do the work in 2050. They may not be able to be the creative thinkers that we need. His point is, if you work in a sewing factory in a fourth world country, you may not be able to transfer your skills over to to what is needed in this new coming generation. So the challenge for us, because we are